ECW is that last bastion of crazy renegades that would go out there, kill each other in front of the fans, and then they would party in front of the fans. We were sex, drugs, and rock and roll. People must realize that everything we did in ECW was illegal, especially with the music. Paul Heyman was always like, my father's a lawyer, send him the letters. Towards the end, we started getting cease and desist, but I know every time I hear Man in a Box, I think of myself. I hear Enter the Sandman. Music has a direct correlation with an emotion. It can tell you exactly where you were. You hear any song on the radio that you know, you could spark, you could get upset. I could think about an ex-girlfriend. Music captures emotions, and what they did in ECW was tag those musical emotions with certain wrestlers, so the moment you heard it, you knew who was coming out and what to expect. For 4 minutes and 44 seconds, you'd have 2,000 people singing Enter the Sandman. You'd have the same amount of people singing Rob Van Dam's Walk to the ring. You'd have people singing Balls Mahoney's song to the ring. That's why we were a family, because we're celebrating having a good time. Think of what we had done to some of the fans. Bam Bam Bigelow would pick up Spike Dudley and throw him into the audience. If that happened today, think of how many lawsuits would happen. But back then, the fans were just happy to be part of the show, and they so much were. The chants, their energy, we fed off of their energy, and they fed off of ours. It was, like I've said, we are a dysfunctional family, and we always have been. And that's what made it so special. The ECW locker room was insane. You'd have, men bleeding. You'd have, piles of blood in the back, and then we didn't have nice arenas. We would have not separate locker rooms for the girls. The girls would hold up towels as they would change, and here's all these hot girls walking around. There was a lot of beer. There was never drug use in the sense of heavy narcotics at the arena. You could always smell marijuana, but guys would go outside for that because you didn't want to lose the buildings. But there was a lot of, we were sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Behind the scenes, we would tell the fans, hey, we're at the Travel Lodge. Hey, we're at the Holiday Inn. So all those people who were at the wrestling show would then come and party with the guys. And there was a lot of drugs, there was a lot of booze. It was the time, and it was, the 80s were the period of excess, and you hear in rock and roll and all the groupies. ECW was that last bastion of crazy renegades that would go out there, kill each other in front of the fans, and then they would party in front of the fans. And it was anything you could think about that would happen. If you took Motley Crue's The Dirt book, multiply that by 20, and that was my weekends. Your company's getting more popular when the girls start coming. The girls start coming because they want to hang out with the men. And the best part about ECW too was if you had hot chicks, but every time you have hot chicks, you also have this not so hot chicks. But even in the not so hot chicks, they could be like, hey, Balls Mahoney, take this one. There was something for everyone. If you wanted booze, you can have booze. If you want to just come there and take a picture, you can take a picture. If you wanted to smoke pot with somebody, you could smoke pot with Rob Van Dam. You want to drink a beer with the Sandman, you can drink a beer with the Sandman. You want to go do drugs with wrestlers, you can do drugs. You want to have sex with wrestlers, you could have sex with wrestlers. It was the best time ever. And that was what I got to live for 8 years. One time driving to a show that I'm running, my first ever show, I'm missing Little Guido, Bill Alfonso, Raven, Rhino, and the Sandman. It's 7 o'clock and none of them are there. No one has called, nothing. Rhino comes in, he looks at me, he goes, I need to talk to you. Throws down his bags and we go into another room. I'm thinking they finally snapped him. He was a rookie then. He's pacing back and forth, and I've known Rhino, he's a very quiet man, And he just turns around and he's like, can't do it, I can't drive with them anymore. I can't do it, I can't drive with them anymore. I'm sitting there like, dude, where is everyone? He's like, they're riding me the whole time. We're trying to drive, I'm trying to get to the show. I don't like to be late. Sandman's dead. They keep on making fun of me. And I'm like, what? And he goes, Sandman's dead. And he's like, they went and they shot up Newbane in a car, and Sandman turns purple. He's dead in the car. So what do I have to sit there and do? By divine intervention, there was an H sign. So here's a bunch of crazy ECW wrestlers. What do they decide to do? Let's pull off the side of the road. They open up the trunk and give him all the drugs so there's no investigation. They drive a dead Sandman to the emergency room, pull him out. Little Guido runs in and goes, there's a dead guy here. They get in the car and they drive back, so they go to perform a wrestling show. I'm like, what are you talking about? And I'm trying to hold back tears, anger, everything with like Superman. Here comes the Sandman. Thing still on his arms, kicks open the door. Yo, I'm ready to go. They stuck the needle in my heart like Pulp Fiction, brought me back. What am I doing tonight? Sandman literally died of a drug overdose in the car, came back and wrestled that night. Because that's what the craziness of ECW was. The first invasion, where me, Paul, and Sandman showed up in Philadelphia, and the only person they told that what was going on was Savio Vega, and he was wrestling Bradshaw with Dutch Mantel. Everybody in the back thought we were really invading. There was guys in the back have told us they were ready to fight us. Us being ECW people, we had plants in the audience as well. We had the Eliminators, we had Taz, we had a bunch of wrestlers in the stands that WWE didn't know about. We went and got tickets because if a fight really broke out, we had to defend ourselves. Think of that for a moment. Paul is telling us that we're going to invade and they know about it. But meanwhile, the moment, I remember when Jerry Briscoe came down and he's under his breath, you motherfuckers, I'll kick your ass, hop that guardrail. I'm looking at his eyes, I'm like, this guy doesn't know. And in an instant, that could have turned into a real fight. And we were ready for it, and the guys in the WWE were ready for it. They thought it was real. And that was bad to go then into that hostile environment. But if you think about it, that what kicked off not so much the Monday Night Wars, but anything can happen on Monday Night Raw. We were that little igniter that happened, and it was, again, a part of history that can never be repeated ever again. I left WWE not hating wrestling, but just hating the system, because to me it was unfair. Rob Van Dam brought the idea to Vince McMahon to bring back ECW over the success of the DVD. They did not like Paul Heyman whatsoever in WWE. I got the opportunity to write the ECW One Night Stand 2005 pay-per-view. The show was going off without a hitch until my good friend, Bubba Ray Dudley, hit me from behind with the Singapore cane in my ear. The loudest feedback you ever can hear from a microphone where an entire, people like, that was only going off in my head. And I heard this crazy ringing, it dropped me. And I knew I had to continue, I knew I had to go on. I'm wiping away the blood out of my eyes because I can't see. I would suck it up because I knew I had to continue. Professional wrestling is not like MMA or boxing where if I can't continue anymore, I just lay back down and I lose. Professional wrestling, I know I have to go back on and continue the show. And I knew at some point I was going to go through a flaming table. And it's almost like your adrenaline starts kicking because you know you have to do it. You have to do it for people who are watching in the audience, people who are watching on pay-per-view, and you have to do it because you have your own pride. And you have to get back up and finish the match. And then I remember I was a little nervous going through a flaming table because Bubba doused it with lighter fluid, not once, but twice. And when that ignite happened, you will see a giant fireball. And I hear Bubba, "You ready?" There's nothing I can do. And you could just feel that intense heat. And anyone who's been around a fire realizes this, but in the back of your head, you have to just say, "God, I hope I don't get burnt too bad," as well as I know no matter what, you know how this fire is getting put out? It's gonna be put out with my body. And up in the air I went. You lose where you are for about a half a second, and then you could just feel the flame and the heat rush around your body. I hit stop, drop, and roll, and I would get off that table because if it's still lit, I know I'm gonna start getting severely burnt, as well as if you're laying on the table heats up and the plastic will stick to your body. I remember once it went off and then I lost, I was happy. And that's the weirdest thing I could ever try to explain to someone, what it's like to be inside a wrestling ring, or when you're surrounded by all this violence. I had an inner peace that I knew I had a great match. I'm leaning against the guardrail, covered in blood, and I'm sitting next to Beulah, who's always been there by my side. She's not, she's my real wife, but she was my on-air, girlfriend. And I had a smile on my face. I was covered in blood because to me, it was closure for the biggest part of my life. And then when I went to the back, my ear was killing me and I could barely hear. They're tending to my burns, and I didn't get severely burnt, but they were very, very concerned about my ear. It instantly swelled up, and the doctor turned to me and he said, you have such trauma to your ear, in the next 3 to 4 weeks, your ear may just fall off. And I was also working in the WWE office at that time, and I honestly and truly wanted my ear, I'd be sitting in my desk, to fall off, because then I would take my ear and walk to Vince McMahon's office and say, "Vince, my ear just fell off. Can I have some more money for that match I did a month ago?" True story. That year alone, it was the second largest grossing house next to a little show called WrestleMania that year. And for me, I thought, oh man, Vince is gonna see it in me. This is it. Vince is finally, I wrestled it, I wrote the whole show, I agented every match, I main evented in them, and he's gonna see, this is truly who Tommy Dreamer is. And for them, it was Monday. And I was let down, but they said we're gonna do it the next year. It was gonna be totally different from the WWE product. I remember picking up the phone and telling my wife, I did it. This is it. He finally saw it in me. And the very first show, it was over. I knew it was over going into the pay-per-view because it had a lot more WWE spin on the show. And I knew right then and there, this ain't gonna work out. But I always had hope and I always continued to try. It still paid off because I got to work at WrestleMania. That WrestleMania in Detroit, there's a part where me and Rob Van Dam, he looked up and he's like, "Dude, there's your wife and kids." And I was like, you know what? Let me just take it in, because it was for that moment where, man, I was hanging out with 4 of my friends. I'm about to have one of the biggest matches of my life, and in front of the largest crowd I've ever worked in front of. And I just enjoyed that moment. And I always have to enjoy those moments. And I tell a lot of people, you have to live for those moments because you may never get them ever again. So it was all cool. I left WWE not hating wrestling, but just hating the system, because to me it was unfair. To me, I am 100% business at all times, and I do not believe in, oh, nothing personal, it's just business. Everything in business is personal. I got so fed up with the politics behind the scenes, I started my own company. And my slogan, no politics, no BS, just wrestling. And that's what I grew up watching, and that's what I want to represent every time I have my own House of Hardcore shows. Life is hard, but maybe for 3 hours of your life, you just put away all your problems and you cheer, you boo, you cry, you have a great time, and you just say, wow, I loved what I just saw, I can't wait to come back for more. WCW at one point offered me more money than I probably would have ever made in my career to leave ECW. I've thought about this a lot. If I had to give myself more advice, a lot of people, when they want to knock Paulie and they want to knock, ECW for a lot of, the negative things. Everybody stayed in ECW by choice. Also, a lot of guys had no place to go. And, they want to say, oh, they bounced checks on me, or he folded the company, he was in bed with WWE all along. You decided to stay. You are responsible for all your own actions. If you weren't happy about it, do something else about it. For younger me, I always, WCW at one point offered me more money than I probably would have ever made in my career to leave ECW. I knew if I left ECW, it would have hurt. I went to Paul, and Paul was crying to me, you can't do it, we're so close to making it. And it was for a lot of money. I'm telling you, a lot of money. Paul lied to me, but he lied to me to keep ECW going, which I actually get. And if I would have left, I would never have been Tommy Dreamer. And staying and going down with the ship of ECW helped me along the way to appreciate what I have, made the fans rally behind me more. I've stayed in the business longer than everyone else who did leave. And when I hear negative stuff about wrestling or wrestling companies, and why I guess I'm so passionate, because you never want to lose something that you love, and you never want that to ever go away. If you want to talk to people in Montreal who are Expos fans, you will talk about how gutted they feel. I lived that in ECW, and it wasn't about the money. It was about losing something you love. It was like a death, and it was the worst time of my life, but I survived. And if I could tell myself I have no regrets, I would do everything pretty much the exact same way, because my life turned out okay. First time I met Beulah McGillicuddy, who later on became my wife, was in a hotel. She was checking in. I, of course, being Tommy Dreamer, checked her out, and I was like, man, she's not that bad. And she had a bit of an attitude on her, and we really, I don't want to say we didn't get along. She really just had no interest in me, and I had no interest in her. As the storyline, continued to progress, and we actually became really, really good friends, where you were working with each other. That's naturally happens. And then once we hooked up on screen, then we hooked up behind the scenes. And she's been with me through thick and thin. She's gonna go to heaven for being and tolerating with me. And if there was ever a character of a woman who stood by her man, it's Beulah McGillicuddy, because she stood by Tommy Dreamer and still does. I can say a lot of things about Beulah McGillicuddy, but I can never not say that she wasn't the best thing to happen in my life, because she gave me the best thing in my life, my kids, and she is the best mother I have ever seen. She truly is. And at times I'm on the road for WWE a lot, and she did it with 2 babies at once. all by herself, and she gets so much credit, and that's, I couldn't be thankful. I never have to worry about anything when I was on the road. You can have a house and you can have kids, but when I come home, I have a family and I have a home, and that's because of what she said. Because I can live anywhere. I could, you spend nights in hotels. I can adapt to my situation. Hell, I can live in this room with all these MMA, UFC posters, and I'll be fine for 17, 20 days. But I know when I come home, I get to go home. And that's where Tommy Dreamer ends and Tom Laughlin takes over. Having twin girls was, for a lot of wrestlers would say, for Tommy Dreamer's karma, because like I said, any of your vices, they would jump on it. Mine wasn't drinking, mine wasn't the drugs or the rock and roll. When they say kids change your life, they're my best friends. I will always be remembered for ECW. I will be remembered for, the heart and soul of ECW, having all this passion for wrestling. It's nothing compared to how much I love my kids. And if that's my legacy, I'm so happy about it. I think my happiest part of returning to WWE recently was my dad took me to go see wrestling at Madison Square Garden. My kids don't care about professional wrestling, but I got to wrestle the day after Christmas at a sold-out Madison Square Garden, semi-main event in Madison Square Garden, probably my last time ever at Madison Square Garden. And we had sold out 26,000 people chanting Tommy Dreamer, and my daughters got to see that. And that was really, really cool, because they're at an age now that they can remember that forever, how I remember my stuff with my dad. And maybe when they have kids, they could say, hey, girls or boys, whatever they have, crazy grandpa who's over there talking to the wall and doing wrestling maneuvers to no one who's there. At one point, he was a somebody. And that meant the world to me that they got to see me do that. And shockingly win a match, too. But win, lose, or draw, it was just a happy moment for me that I will always cherish, because for one moment in time, their dad was really, really cool.